Hey, parents, welcome back to our show. I don't know about you, but I've had this issue where my kids are trying to get my attention and my face is in my phone. And I'm like, just a minute, I just got to finish up this one thing. And then all of a sudden, 1 minute turns into 15 minutes, turns into 30 minutes, and then they've disappeared. And when I realize I've totally forgotten about them, the guilt and shame just riddles me. And I also have this issue at night at home with my family, right? I come home from work and I come in the door and we get dinner and we have dinner together as a family and then we're getting bedtime stuff going and I'm ready to connect with my husband and all of a sudden like he might be on his phone in bed, right? He's either checking the news or the weather for tomorrow or scrolling social media and then I'm like, "Oh, I shouldn't interrupt him. I know he needs a little downtime." But the connection gets lost. And I know that happens for him with me as well. So recently, I was at a holiday gathering with lots of family members, and we hadn't seen each other in a long time. And I just looked around the room, and all of a sudden, I noticed that every single one of us had our faces down in our phones. We were not even connecting with each other in the same room, but all on our own devices. And so I just thought, man, there has got to be a better way where we're not offending each other, but we're able to connect without guilt or shame. And so I started kind of looking around and I ran across this organization called ARO, ARO, rhymes with tomorrow. So I found this great ad on social media. Yep, one of those times I was scrolling. And I really got this sense of like community and like that there's this lifestyle that is available and is possible for us as families where we can set healthy boundaries around these devices and really intentionally connect with each other. So I just reached out to one of the co-founders, Joey Odom, and said, "Hey man, would you join us on our podcast and just tell us firsthand what is behind your community and this lifestyle that is available to all of us as parents and grandparents and kiddos that are using devices in these days?" And he said, "Absolutely." So welcome to the show, Joey Odom.
Jordan, it's so good to see you. Really, really excited to talk today.
This is going to be awesome. Guys, Joey's a real natural storyteller. So you're in for a treat. He's a dynamic leader who's known for his ability to inspire and foster deep connections with others. And his own experience with technology as a husband and dad is what led him to help create RO alongside his co-founder Heath Wilson. And Joey, you also host the RO podcast with which is kind of a weekly conversation with leaders and influencers who also strive to live really intentionally, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So, Joey, you're married to your wife of almost 20 years and have two children, Harrison, age 16, and Gianna, 14. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and I'm weeks away from my 20-year anniversary, so and I've not bought a gift yet. So I think there's a real problem there, but I got to solve that. But yeah, coming up on 20 years here.
Congrats. That
Thank
is
you.
awesome. My husband and I are celebrating 20 years in September. So,
Nice.
yes,
Well,
yes,
we can
good
give you all
stuff.
the sage wisdom of being married 3 more months than you, so we can. Yeah,
Right.
we'll give you all the wisdom we have.
Thank you. We haven't gotten gifts for each other either, if that
There you
helps.
go.
So
You got a little more runway than we do.
that's right. Well, tell us what was going on in your own life when you were just kind of like, whoa, something needs to change and we've got to do something that serves
Yeah.
even the larger community.
Well, it's funny, I think that, and I bet you everybody listening to this podcast, this episode today, I bet you everybody says like, all right, I want to be a family character. And they've had these moments where it's just been like, okay, there's something needs to change. And mine goes back about 11 years. So you mentioned my son, Harrison, who is also weeks away. He's turning 16 in a couple weeks. He just passed his driver's test this past Saturday. So he'll get that license on May 29th. But we were there for Harrison's first soccer season when he was 5 years old. So Harrison is a great kid. He's actually a great tennis player now, competitive tennis player. And when he was 5 years old, he was playing his first soccer season and had not, I want to say this nicely, he had not yet learned the ropes of soccer. So he had not yet mastered soccer. And so we did, and anybody who's a parent of a kid who plays sports, they can relate to this. You drag the lawn chairs out, you go plop them on the side of the, which do they still call them lawn chairs, by the way? I don't know. I may be showing my age here. I don't know
Oh,
if
they do. They
they
do.
still
We
call them lawn
do.
chairs. Okay, good. There you go. So bring out the lawn chair, sit on the sidelines, and just, basically wait out an hour until the game's over. And youth soccer, it's not always the most exciting thing, but this particular day, something really extraordinary happened. So it was about midway through the game, and Harrison, everybody on the team had scored a goal this season except for Harrison. So at this moment, middle of the game, Harrison rears back his leg, Jordan, it's almost like you picture this scene like a movie, like slow motion, cue the dramatic music. He kicks the ball and rolls over the grass into the back of the net for Harrison's very first goal. And everybody on the sidelines, all the parents, they knew that Harrison had not scored a goal yet this season. This was his first goal, so everybody goes nuts, right?
Yes.
The coach runs out, lifts him up, and there was this little split second moment, kind of right between the coach going and picking him up and from when he scored the goal, when Harrison did something that 5-year-old boys do, is Harrison turned to the sidelines to lock eyes with me, to share this moment, right? For him to see the
Mm,
pride and the smile on my face and this really, truly magical moment. Except when Harrison looked over to the sidelines, all he saw was the top of my head because I was looking down at my phone.
mm,
And so I missed this first soccer goal. And Harrison swears, Jordan, he swears that he does not remember this. So I don't think I have a therapy bill ahead of me for that. So he swears he doesn't remember this moment, but I remember it. And so then people will naturally ask, they'll say, like, okay, so you missed this important moment. Like, surely it was something that you were looking at that was really, really important. You're doing something really important on your phone. And the answer is yes. I was negotiating a domestic terrorist hostage situation, right? No, I wasn't doing anything important, right? Like, here I am scrolling social media or looking at ESPN or responding to a group text. Like, I have no idea what I was doing, but I do know that I can't get that moment back.
mm.
And it was one of these, and maybe the comforting thing, I don't know if this is comforting or not, but one of the comforting things is we hear parents all the time, like I alluded, to say, I've missed those moments. And in fact, there are probably a lot of moments that we don't even realize that we've missed. Maybe when our kids have looked over to us, when we just haven't seen it. So we don't recognize all these moments. But I realized in that moment that something was wrong. And in fact, when I think about it, I think like what was wrong is that I have a relationship with this device that was getting in the way of what I would claim is one of my most important relationships in my life. And I'd love to say that everything changed at that moment, but it didn't. I still stumbled and I still stubbed my toe. But that's the moment I look back to when I said something has to change when it comes to my relationship with my device.
Yes, I can relate to that 100%. I think all of us listening can. That man, you're just you can't get those moments back.
Yeah.
I did an episode recently where I was talking about, kids and the little programs that they put on at school or their singing concerts and how we all have our phones up
Mm,
capturing the moment.
yeah.
And it just came back to me when you were talking about Harrison looking for you, looking for
Mm,
dad, that pride on your face so he could make that visual connection with
yeah.
you. And he didn't see it. Well, how many times do we have our phone in front of our face when we're
Mm,
trying to videotape the moment and our kids see the back of our phones and not our
yeah.
face? I mean,
That's so
just the
true.
psychology behind that, being a counselor for 20 years really has
Mm,
me freaked out that our kids are not connecting with our eyes, that
yeah.
they're not looking to us as human beings for the support and the affirmation that they need, that they're being blocked by these devices.
Yeah.
And so it's happening to all of us.
You're so right. I mean, and you think about from the perspective of a child. You think about even, I mean, think from a newborn's perspective. And obviously they're not like thinking in words at that moment. They're just kind of observing and digesting what's happening with them and then their brains are adapting to it. But you think of it, then there have been study after study that's come out of the importance of eye contact for
Yes.
infants, right? And so they have this natural need for connection, right? It's so neat. That's the most innate thing. I mean, you even think about, like, you think back in the Old Testament, like the story of Abraham and his concubine, where she runs off, right? And then God finds her and seeks her out, and while she's at the well, and she says, "You're the God who sees me." And so you think
Mm,
back as just that term, which I love, that, like, just this need that we have to be seen is so deep in us. And so, back to like the oldest of of texts in the Bible, that we see that. And so this concept of being seen, you think about a child, their need to be seen and their need to connect. And then we insert this unnatural device right in between that, right in front of their natural need for connection. And we're beginning to see, and this is really interesting, as we're doing our work and our studying, and as we've launched this company, as we've launched our over the last few years, we've heard these stories of very young kids, 15 months old, 2 years old, taking their parents' phone and throwing them across the room, or taking their
ah,
parents' phone and moving it down, or grabbing your parents' face and having them look at you. And so, in a way, like, kids have felt the from a very young age, what happens when you put an unnatural device in front of a natural need for connection. And they're actually, not only is it just like crushing them inside, but they're actually mad about it. They're very
mm,
angry about it. And I think with good reason.
yes.
So we have this thing. And again, when you take a step back and think about it, Jordan, it's in a way, and I think I'm very encouraged, actually. Jonathan Haidt has just released a book called The Anxious Generation that everybody's talking about, that
Mm,
really puts into words this tension we're feeling. And I love that and we're going to look back, I believe, at this period of time, now up till 15 years ago, and say, I can't believe we used to do that. I
I
really do
know.
think we're going to look at that and be like, this is so funny. I mean, in the same way we look back on cigarette commercials and cigarette ads, you have these doctors with stethoscopes smoking a cigarette in these old cigarette ads,
Yes.
and they're so laughable now. We are going to do that now. And the people who are arguing this, I read an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal about people coming out against Jonathan Haidt's book and saying, wait a second, there's no connection between teenage anxiety and social media.
Oh,
And you just look at them, you're like, you are on such the wrong side of history here. Like, what are you talking about? Like, obviously, this is something that is absolutely catastrophic to our kids' upbringing, to their natural need for connection. And the cool thing about it, about all of it, as dire as it may seem, and as everybody talks about it, it's usually with a lot of doom and gloom and despair. I could not disagree more. This is such a hopeful opportunity all of us have. This is such an
mm,
amazing opportunity for families, because we can get it right. The
yes.
answer is so accessible. The answer is right in front of us, and it's not going to be fun. It may not be as interesting as watching cat videos on your phone. It may not be as interesting as watching dance videos on TikTok, but this is the greatest opportunity we have for connection right now in 2024.
I love what you're talking about. And there absolutely is a connection between social
Oh,
media and
yeah.
anxiety. The
Come
other
on.
thing I was thinking about the other day, I thought, man, when I was back in high school, what was the social media platform back then? It was MySpace.
MySpace. There you go.
MySpace. Then we
Yeah.
transitioned to Facebook, and now people got sick of Facebook. So now it's Instagram. And then Instagram's not great. So it's, you know, this and that TikTok and X. And like, we just keep jumping to another platform
Yeah.
because we burn ourselves out. We get bored.
Mm,
It doesn't give us enough. And so we
yeah.
just keep chasing, and people are happy to create a new platform that's shiny
Yeah.
and will grab our attention. But
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I feel burnt out on it. I'm ready to throw my phone out the window 3 days a week when I'm crossing Arapahoe Road to go to my house. And I'm thinking, I just checked my email at the stoplight.
Yeah. Yes. I know it.
I'm sick
Yeah.
of this thing. I have a love-hate relationship with this phone. I love how instant we can get things, but then I
Mm,
hate it because it distracts me from my relationships, and
yeah.
it gets us in this place of vice
Yeah.
versus, a place of self-discipline and self-control.
Well, it's so true. And I think one interesting thing is, we think about this a lot, and you and I have used the term relationship a bunch already. And I think that's for good reason, because it is our relationships that are suffering most from it, our most important relationship. And it all begins with this relationship we have with our phones, which, whenever I say our relationship with our phones, no one says, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean a relationship with their phone?" No one. That's not a weird thing to say, but we have to take a step back for a moment and realize That's very weird. We're talking about a rectangle that we have a relationship with. We're talking about an object, and we're all just universally agreeing that we have a relationship with it, and we absolutely do have a relationship with it. But that is unbelievably uncommon in adulthood to have a relationship with an object.
Yes.
However, in childhood, that's not odd to have a relationship with an object. And children have relationships with objects that are called transitional objects. Another term you're probably familiar with this they're also referred to as comfort objects. And
Yes.
those are things like pacifiers and blankies and teddy bears. So the purpose that serves is when a child is young, when they're around their parents, they have no need for this transitional object or comfort object. We'll call it a comfort object. They have no need for a comfort object. But when their parents leave the room, they cling to this thing. They cling to this object, this comfort object, and it gives them a false sense of security, a false sense of comfort. It gives them a sense of comfort. But it's not actually doing anything other than giving them that feeling. And they
Yes.
do that in the absence of their real security, in the absence of their real comfort, which is their parents, right?
Mm.
And
Yes.
these are helpful tools for children. I mean, these are really good things for them, because what they do is after a while they realize, oh, I can do this without the blanket. This is transitioning me into independence. I can do this on my own. I don't need the
Yes.
pacifier. I don't need the teddy bear. So they serve a very good, very helpful purpose. But when you look at those in the context of adulthood, we have these new comfort objects, these new transitional objects that are called smartphones, and we cling to them all the time. But
Mm.
instead of transitioning us into independence, they're kind of devolving us back into isolation. And the weird thing here is I want to think exactly how to say this right, is a child clings to a comfort object to give them a false sense of security in the absence of real security, in the absence of their parents. We're clinging to these comfort objects in the presence of real security, in the presence of real relationships. We're doing this as we sit across the table from our spouses. We're doing this as we sit across the table from great friends. We're doing this as we sit across the table from our kids. We're clinging to these things. And so it's putting us back in this state of adolescence that is very, very unhealthy. And that begins with the relationship, right? So I'll take a pause there. I want to continue on with that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I know you're familiar with kind of transitional and comfort objects, but how does that resonate with you?
Oh, yeah. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, those transitional objects are there for the development, the natural development of a child. I mean, that's part of, that kind of transitional object or object relations theory,
Mm,
part of their development. And so it's a good thing, but it's to transition them away from it. Right. And like you said, as adults, we have these connections in the room with us, and we are interrupting those connections because of this device.
yeah, yeah,
It's
it's
the
so true.
opposite. Oh,
And what's so interesting about it, it's so again, I'll take a, I'll probably caveat this about 5 times. You've heard my story of missing my son's first soccer goal. That's not the only moment I missed. Everything that we're saying here is from a place, never from a place of self-righteousness. This is all because we needed. I mean, I quit a career to start a company along with my business partner because I was so bad at this, right? So
yes.
let's not all of you have to quit a career just to get this right. Hopefully we've got the company that'll help you here, but we've done this. So as we talk about this is because I do understand it. But as we talk about this, like in very objective terms, as we're discussing it, Jordan, it is almost laughable. Like, what are we talking about? Like,
Yes.
people work so they spend most of their adolescence hoping and praying for a great partner, someone they'll marry someday that's going to be great. And then the next thing you do is like, okay, well, we'll have kids someday, and having kids can be a very like toilsome, like long drawn out process. And then we finally have kids, and now we're just sitting here scrolling this away, these things that we've wanted all of our lives. Like, it seems so silly, and I understand that, but these things are so compelling, and it's
Mhm.
almost as if we need to get a picture, though. I say compelling. They It's like wanting to have chocolate ice cream for dinner instead of having a chicken breast and broccoli. Like, we know the good effects of the other stuff, but chocolate ice cream just tastes delicious, right?
Right.
And so it's a little bit challenging, but and so we have to ask ourselves, like, okay, well, how have we gotten into this relationship with our phones? And this is something that we call this the PID cycle, PID, the PID
Mhm.
cycle. This is how we've gotten into it. So it begins with our phones. It begins with a P, which is proximity. So our phones, we are with our phones all the time. So statistically, 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day. 91% of us don't have to move our feet to get to our phones. So we're always around them. So this proximity that we have with our phones leads us to which is interaction, leads us to interact with our phones virtually all the time. And conventional advice says basically, hey, we'll just silence your notifications and then you won't use your phone as much. Interestingly, that can actually be a counter. That can have a counter effect to it. You can actually end up using your phones even more when your notifications are silenced, which is weird. But the reason why is at least when you're notified of something, then you know when to check it. Otherwise, you're just thinking, oh, what's happening in there? What's happening in there? What's happening in there? So it leads you to pick up more. And there's study after study that's showing this. And interestingly, when we think about our phones, we think, okay, well, it is the notifications that are interrupting us. Well, but again, the stats tell us that 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated. We are the ones that are picking up our phones to see what's on there. Only about 11% of our distractions from our phones are inbound. Only 11% of our usage is inbound. So when we're around our phones, there's the P, proximity. It leads us to interaction, which is the I, which leads us into a level of dependence on our phones.
Mm.
Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because our phones are actually really helpful. Our phones actually do really great things for us, right? I mean,
Yes.
I'm learning French on my phone and I can order a Jimmy John sub and I can use Waze to get me wherever I'd like to go. So they do some useful things for us. However, because we interact with them so much, we're also lulled into a sense of false dependency on them. So this
Mm.
false dependence. So an example of that, probably the best example, we all know that we shouldn't look at our phones before bed. We all know we shouldn't look at our phones in the middle of the night. We know it disrupts our sleep. We know the blue light kind of disrupts our REM cycle and all that stuff. It's bad for us. Yet, most of us sleep with our phones in our room.
Mm.
And again, I understand, hey, what if someone calls in the middle of the night? I do understand all of that. But most of us have our phones with us in there. And the reason why is, well, I use it as my alarm clock. That's why. That's not a real dependence. That is a false dependence. You can go and you can get a $15 alarm clock that will wake you up in the same way that your phone will wake you up. So another one would be, and maybe this is another one where it's a little bit of a gray area, is our cameras. Well, I don't want to miss a moment. I don't want to miss a moment. If you really can get around that, you don't actually need your phone for that. So we're lulled into these false sense of dependencies. And the reason why we call this a cycle is when you're dependent on your phone or you feel like you're dependent on your phone, then you don't want to give it up. So what does that do? That leads you back to proximity. Well, I got to be around it. I got to be around it. And then when you're around it, you're going to use it more. You're going to interact with it more. Then you're going to feel more dependent on it. And so that cycle continues on. So the relationship, that is an extraordinarily long way of saying the relationship we have with our phone all begins with this proximity piece, that they are with us all the time. And that is the defining characteristic of our phones that leads us into all this interaction, that leads us into all this dependence. And by the way, there are a lot of good people out there, a lot of good organizations that are solving some of the woes of our phone, things like social media, online bullying, all that stuff. We should absolutely address that. That's very important. We really applaud those people that are doing that. What we at RO are focused on is helping people go to this core relationship we have with our phone and changing that core relationship. Because when you change your relationship with your phone, you change your relationship with everyone around you, including your relationship with yourself.
Mm. I love this. I am taking notes over here. Change the core relationship with your phone. That's where it starts. That's
Yeah.
like getting at the root of it, not just
Mm,
setting the do not disturb or not just, putting the Freedom app on your phone and keeping your phone with you all the time, which again,
yeah.
I love what they're doing at Freedom. Help people set some healthy limits, but this proximity thing, Joey, oh my
Mm.
gosh, as you were talking about that, I'm like, there have been times when I have refused to buy a great pair of pants that I love and look good because they don't have a pocket for my phone. I mean, right? You're
That's
afraid to go
awesome.
to the gym with the yoga pants that don't have
Yeah.
the phone pocket because you might miss something, or you
Yep.
might have to carry it and put it in a locker and then you be away from it. I mean,
Mm.
and it's we all do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I have these issues. You've had these issues in the past. We have developed this real dependency on it. I mean,
Mm.
I'll notice myself walking around the house and I've got this phone just in my hand. I just have
Yeah.
it in my hand and I'm cooking dinner and I've got it in one hand. It's not nothing's even going on it. There's
Mm.
no music, there's no show. It's just like
Yeah.
this attachment that I've developed, this dependency.
Which Jordan, it's not like I think how to say this. If it were just us having our if it were just having our phone with us all the time, it wouldn't matter. And I'm trying to think of a good example. Maybe this may be a terrible example. It's not like we say because we wear shirts all the time that that's a problem. That we have shirts with us 24 hours a day, like that's a problem. No, our shirts aren't getting in the way of anything other than us just being embarrassed in public, right? Like
Right.
our shirts serve a purpose for us. So the fact that we have our phones with us, the fact that we have this relationship with our phones, that's not the problem. The problem is the devastating effects it's having on everybody around us,
Mm,
right? And so
yes.
you think about this concept, and we strongly believe that the crisis, the real crisis here, is not a phone crisis. The crisis we have is an intimacy crisis in all of our
Mm,
relationships. We are our intimacy in every one of our relationships is being deteriorated by this, and it's dying. I mean, you've heard the term death by a thousand cuts. Our relationship, our intimacy is dying. It's a death by a thousand glances. Is that
yes.
when my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, is trying to open up to me. And by the way, for anybody who has been a teenage girl or knows a teenage girl or is a teenage girl, it's hard to be a teenage girl, right?
It
There's a
is.
lot of pressure on there, especially in an age of social media and body comparison and all that kind of stuff. Like it's very, very hard. And so if my daughter Gianna, if she happened to open up to me one day and says, "Hey, Dad, can I talk to you about what happened at school today?" And I could sit there, Jordan, I could sit there for 59 minutes and 45 seconds of full focus. And all it takes is one glance down while she's in the middle of opening up. And that kills the moment. But it doesn't just kill that moment, it kills her willingness to be open with me again. It kills her because she'll remember, her little neuroplastic brain will remember the last time I was vulnerable, Dad, I got shut down because he wasn't
Mm,
focused on me. So you can get so much right. And just a moment of lack of presence can ruin all of it. And in the same way, you can actually get so much wrong as a parent, and then full presence makes up for all of it. So it's these, and let's think about going on a date night with your spouse. You get all dressed up, you go out to a date, and then what do? You sit on your phones the whole time. Like, what does that do for your relationship? What does that do for intimacy? What does that do for? And again, I'll point out to the fellas here, like to the guys, like your wife is craving connection with you, even if she's
yes.
on her phone a bunch. She is craving connection with you, and she's just waiting for your initiation. She's
Mm,
waiting for you to sit down at dinner and say, "Hey, I'm so excited to have dinner. I got an idea. Let's switch phones during dinner." Or, "Hey, will you hold this phone? Will you just," or you just say, "Hey, will you hold my phone for me at dinner? I want to be here with you." Like just
yes.
that little thing. She's great. And by the way, at RO, we get very few returns. So our product, we have very few returns, but the few that we do, almost universally, there's one answer. And it's a wife. So by the way, our orders are about 65 to 70% moms order from RO. So they're leading the charge on digital wellness. But of the very few returns we get, the answer is almost universal. It says, "I couldn't get my husband on board with it," which
Mm,
makes me want to go shake the husbands because it's
I
like,
know.
bro, like your wife has brought something in your home for connection and you're saying no to that. You're saying no to intimacy. Like, not only is that bad for you, like, it's basically subverting all the other things you want in your life because you're not willing to do something that allows connection in your home or sets a good framework for your kids growing up. That's a little bit
Mm,
of an aside, but that's a little bit of a soapbox. However, we do know that this intimacy in relationships all across the board is totally damaged by these thousand glances, these death by a thousand glances on our phones. And again, you used this word earlier, like self-discipline, having the self-discipline. I believe that any sustainable, effective solution has to rely less on self-discipline and willpower and more on environment. So
mm,
James Clear in Atomic Habits says basically that. He said environment is always stronger than willpower. If you're just thinking you're just going to gut it out and you're going to make all the right decisions every single time, it's going to give out. But if environment, he gives an example of, if you want to be a runner, put your running shoes by the door that you walk out every
yes.
day. That's a little bit of an environmental change. That's a small environmental change. So what are these ways? And again, our business is all designed around kind of changing that environment so that so you don't have to rely on willpower, so you can kind of gamify the experience being away from your phone. And so if you can begin to do that and curating your environment towards your goals as opposed to relying on self-discipline, that's where you really will see sustainable change.
Yes, I love what you're saying here. And at the beginning, when you're trying to change a habit, I love James Clear. That is such a
That's
great
great.
book, Habit Stacking. It's so good.
Mm,
But when you're trying to change an ingrained habit of this dependency on this device, it's helpful to have a tool
yeah.
that helps at the beginning until this becomes this natural habit. So
Mm.
I can't wait for you to tell us about this because I have so many ideas about that little thing on the shelf right behind you. I just have so many thoughts about it that I want to flesh out with you here on the
I
show.
love
So
that.
you're talking about like change your home environment, change
Mm.
what it looks like. Instead of having your phones out hanging by a cord from the outlet on the
Yeah.
countertop. Well, I mean, tell us
Yeah.
about this tool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And one caveat for the listener, this is not a product pitch. This is not, I believe that the term RO is a term that means to notice, to turn towards. I believe that everybody listening today can live a lifestyle of RO, can live a lifestyle of notice, can the noticing the people around them, the beautiful world around them, the beautiful lines in a novel, whatever that is, a feeling that you're feeling inside. I think we can all live a lifestyle of RO. So I want to make sure as we're talking about this does not come across as a product pitch because it's not. However, we built this because I needed help. My business
Yes.
partner, Heath, we needed help. We needed some help getting this thing out of our pockets, which sounds so basic and it sounds so easy. But we just said, it's not really working for me. And this, in a way, you can compare it to exercise. I mean, we all know that you can burn calories for free and you can build muscle for free. You can run around the neighborhood and you can do push ups and sit ups and pull ups all for free. Yet, most of us join a gym because we need some help removing the friction of doing something difficult that is valuable. Exercise is valuable, but it's difficult. We need a community around us. We need somebody telling us what kind of workouts we need to do. We need a place we go to. We need the equipment, all that kind of stuff. So RO is a platform designed for families. And in fact, we're the only digital wellness platform and solution designed for families. Everything else
Mm.
is kind of just for the parents, just for the kids. This is for everyone that everybody can participate in. That can be a real team around doing this. So our the platform, it's a combination of a thing you said over my shoulder, this beautiful home decor piece that holds and charges your phones. And when you put it in your phone in the RO box, it automatically connects to the RO app. And what that does, it begins to quantify the amount of time that you're physically distant from your phone, the amount of time that's in the RO box. And so what you can do with that, let's say you go finish an RO session, when you take your phone out of the box, it'll say, hey, you just spent 47 minutes away from your phone, and you do a quick tap of what you were doing. So in doing that, what makes it fun, you're tagging those sessions and then you get to see how that builds up over time. So you're gamifying the experience of being away from your phone. By the way, there are also leaderboards for your family. You can connect your kind of daily ring, almost like a fitness ring, how much time you're away from your phone. You can see how many days of streaks you have physically distant from your phone. So you can do all of that. So that app experience, which is fantastic. And we just released a new version of the app that will really gamify the experience of being away from your phone. Now, this is all built around the habit loop. We mentioned James Clear, which
Mhm.
begins with a cue. You have the visual cue of the box, the RO box. And the reason that's powerful, that there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them, it is a physical tactile thing. Second thing is it really, not only is it a place to hold your phone, but it's also just a visual reminder of who you aspire to be. You see this in a prominent place and you say, for my family, the Odom family, hey, the Odom family, we're present. Hey, we are with each other. We care about what everybody around us feels. And so that's why we put our phones down. So you have the cue, it leads to the routine of putting it on your phone, and then you have the reward. The reward is, the gamification, the badges, all that kind of stuff the social media companies use to keep you on your phone, we use to keep you off your phone. But the real reward is what happens when you're away from your phone, the life that happens on the other side, a great family dinner conversation, or playing outside on the trampoline, or having maybe a difficult conversation with one of your kids or your spouse. So we've designed this entire system to go to that core relationship and make it easy to get this phone out of your pocket and
Mm.
into the RO box. And for my kids, again, my kids are 16 and 14. We've been using RO since before they got phones. So it's made it really easy when they got phones because this is just normal to them now. Your phone doesn't live in the room. It never sleeps in the room with them at night,
Yeah.
which is very easy to initiate good behavior versus changing bad behavior. You can change bad behavior, but it's a lot easier to initiate good behavior. It's been easy for them. It's been normal for them. They've seen me do it. They've seen my wife do it. That's kind of become a normal family rhythm. That's just kind of become like part of the culture of how we live in our lives at home. So it is, I'll give one little anecdote that goes along with it. So I was reading in my journal the other day. I do a 5-year journal where you have every year you have an entry. So May 8th, 2020, my daughter Gianna, who was 10 at the time, we watched a Harry Potter movie. And she said to me at the end of the movie, she goes, Dad, she goes, did you know this is the first time that we've watched a movie and you haven't had your phone? So this is May 8th, 2020. which Jordan was a little bit of a gut punch. Like, it was
Sure.
like, have I been this bad of a dad for 10 years?
Oh, I
Right.
get it.
You
Yes.
know what I mean? And so it
Yes.
was a gut punch, but there was another element of it where and this, we had just been beta testing RO. So this is brand new, but there's another part of me that said, okay, like I've done something good. I'm kind of proud of myself. So I read that to Gianna the other day and she laughed. She's 14 now. She laughed. She goes, Dad, that would be so weird if you had your phone during a movie now. So in
Wow.
4 years, what's normal for her has drastically changed. I mean, her normal is completely different. So that's an encouragement from the chief of sinners, the guy who used to do it worse. If I can do it for everybody out there who maybe feels a little hopeless, or maybe I'm not doing it right, or gosh, I'm having a really hard time here. I just promise you from personal experience, things absolutely can change. Your world and your normal for you and your kids can look entirely different.
I love it. It's the simple things, the small things daily that add up over time.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that example because
Yeah.
all of us have had that experience of, oh, kids' movies aren't my thing. I'm going to check every once in a while. They see that, they
Oh,
notice, you know?
they're little noticing machines. I'm
I
telling you. And again,
know.
all they're doing is noticing and adapting, noticing and adapting, and noticing and adapting. That's all they're doing is from a
Yes.
very young age. So what normal are we providing for them? In fact, we thought that RO would be for families who looked kind of like ours, for my business partner, his family, or my family, with kids, with teenagers who have phones. And it's been entirely different. It's for families, the people who've adopted it most. It's for all families, but it's really for families with kids don't have phones. And you would
Yes.
think that doesn't make sense. Well, I want to change my kids' behavior. Hold on. If you can just establish a normal culture for them to see that your phones are away. In fact, our power users of RO will hand their kids their phones and have their kids put their phones in RO for them. So it's kind of initiating good muscle memory for them. So we have found those young kids are the ones who love RO most because they are now getting the full attention of mom and dad. And it really is a beautiful thing when you can change that normal in your home. And this is for people who've said, I've tried everything, I felt hopeless. This really has made all the difference. That really is who this is for. People who've tried other things, who have great intentions, but maybe need a little bit of help following through. Back to the exercise, joining a gym example.
Yes. That makes so much sense. And we have an 18-year-old who's had a smartphone since he was 13. And we have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they keep asking, when are we going to get a
Yep.
phone? And I thought, well, I don't have much to say on this episode about my little ones having any devices.
Mm,
They don't have iPads, they don't have their own
mm,
computers, nothing. We have a computer in our kitchen so that everybody can see what's going on. We have one TV that we all have access to on the main floor. But I love what you're saying about using RO as parents, and my 18-year-old son who docks his phone in our room every single night in our bedroom.
nice.
Um, but to use that and start conditioning the little ones to know that this is just what you do. Like, it
Right.
has a home and it has a curfew.
Yeah, that's right.
You know? That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking when I was thinking of this beautiful designer box that you've made, this charging station. It's like, this is its home.
And
It has a place where it lives, and it needs to be in the home by a certain time. It's got a curfew, just
yeah,
like you, you know?
I think if our phones could talk, they would say, "Hey, will you give me a break, please? Can you let me be by
Ooh.
myself? I need a little bit of me time." Like,
Yeah.
and again, if the R and we say it all the time, like if the RO box could talk, it would basically say to you, Jordan, what's your husband's name?
Josh.
Josh, you say, "Hey, Josh and Jordan, it looks like you're about to have a glass of wine on the back porch. Let me hold your phone so you can have a great time together. Hey, it looks like it's Langdon family dinner time. Hey, let me hold your phones real quick so you can. Hey, it looks like it's bedtime for your 18-year-old. Hey, let me hold your phone for a little bit so you can spend some really good deep rest. I'll get you rejuvenated for the next day. So it really is one of those things that is so basic. You said it. It's so simple, yet it is so difficult, and that is not unlike any other thing in our life that's valuable. What do I
Right.
need to do? What do I need to do as a good husband? I need to speak my wife's love language. I need to be a good listener. I need to initiate a date once a week. I need to, whatever. Like, it's all very basic stuff. I know the answers, yet it's not that easy, right? These are
Yes.
all easy solutions. None of these solutions. And so we need some help. Like I said earlier, we need some help removing that friction so that we can do that difficult thing.
Removing that friction. You're so right. You just have to get that out of the way,
Yeah.
put it in a place where it belongs, a central location where everybody puts their device so that you can
Yeah.
re-engage and connect without the temptation of it being
Yeah.
on your body.
Yeah, by the way, it's still not easy to be a great dad, great mom, great spouse when your phone is up, but it's virtually impossible when it's with you.
Mm.
We're fighting just an extraordinarily difficult battle just by having that around us. And we still, once it's down, there's still some hard work to do of connection, of being present.
There is. It's tough, but I think, like you said, you need that visual cue.
Hmm.
You need to know that there's a spot where this belongs. The other thing I'm thinking is like, in mom circles, we kind of talk about like, well, what are you going to do when your teenagers come over and teen friends come over and like you don't want them being on their phones, you don't want them taking their phones to the basement, you're not sure what they're doing on them. So
Mm.
like it'd be kind of cool to be like, guys, we need to log some minutes here.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
deposit these phones in here and have some real connection and like we can engage the app and grow this like
Yeah.
gamify it like you said.
Well, I mentioned Jonathan Haidt before in The Anxious Generation. Jonathan Haidt talks about a collective action problem. And a collective action problem means that everybody's experiencing the problem, and the only way out of it is for everybody to buy into the solution. Because in a collective action problem like this, let's say that all the boys came over to the house and they're all hanging out in the basement. If only one kid puts his phone away, that does nothing for the situation. In fact, it could cause personal damage to that kid of being excluded or left out. So it
Yes.
causes damage if just one person does it. But if everybody does it, then everybody gets the benefit from it. And in my experience, and you may have experienced this as well, when kids have come over to my house to hang out with my kids, when we say, "Hey, we're going to put our phones here right now," they have the best time. They
Yes.
and I don't care how hooked your kid is in their phone, they still crave connection. They still
Yes.
want connection, and they just need some help. And I think as parents, we have a cool opportunity to do that not only for them, but we have an opportunity to do that within our own social circles. That we can
Absolutely.
lead the way, we can model the way. And we talk about the four ways to change your relationship with your phone, and that's one of the primary ones is to lead the way. And so we think that especially kids, I don't think we're giving them enough credit. We think like, oh, they need their phones, oh, they want their phones, oh, he can't live without his phone, she can't live without her phone. Totally disagree. I actually think they are craving a life without phones, and we need to be good enough parents to give them that opportunity. Not all the time. I'm not saying to abstain from phones forever. By no means am I. I'm just saying, hey, when it's friend time or when it's dinner time or whatever it is, let's do ourselves all a favor and let's just remove that from the situation so that we can be fully immersed in it.
Yes, and you guys have hit the nail on the head by having the app that goes with it, logging the time,
Hmm.
right? The time that you're connected, not that stupid notification that comes up on your phone that tells you you've decreased your screen time from 8.7 hours a day to
Right.
7.6, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is so negative." But you're
Yeah.
logging time spent together. I went to this retreat one time and they sent us home with a really tall candle. And they said, this candle will burn like 50 hours. Once you burn this whole candle, that will have been 50 hours. So every time you hang out with your family, light the candle. You're doing
No, I
something
like
all
that.
together, light the candle. When you're finished, blow it out. And then you can tell how long it takes you to spend 50 hours together as a
Mm,
family of intentional time.
yeah.
And that's essentially, without the fire and the wax, what this device does, right? Is it
Absolutely.
dock your phones and it logs the minutes that you're spending connected.
And it's so fun to see. Like, so if I go in my RO app right now, I would see a roll up of the last 30 days. How have I spent my time? I tag all that time. So 36 hours, and these are your actual numbers in the last 30 days, 36 hours of family time, 22 hours of working, 6 hours of Bible reading, 5 hours with my wife, 5 hours with my son. So on individual time. And so to look and see that roll up of how you're using your time, because I think sometimes the way we act is predicated on, you would know a lot more about this, is predicated on how we view ourselves. So if i
Mm,
if i view myself as a crappy dad, I'm probably going to do the things that a crappy dad does, right? I'm probably
yeah.
not going to make too much effort. But if I view myself as a present father, if I said primarily, if I said I am fully in when I'm around my kids, then I'll start doing those things, whether it's true or not. When I say it, I'll start doing the things that a present father does. And so by looking at that roll up and saying like, here's how I'm living my life, gosh, I'm doing a pretty good job. That's going to only motivate me to do it better again, or to do it well again today, to continue on that positive pattern of behavior.
Mm, yes, and you're so right. If you claim to be that intentional,
Yeah.
then your behaviors are likely to follow. That's
Mm.
just psychology,
Yeah,
right? It's
right.
like you want what's good for your kids and you set that as a goal, and then your behaviors are what move the needle, move you towards being more of that intentional person.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so I think having a device or having something, this beautiful home decor product or box with charging station is is a part of that. It's like part of the behavior of
Yeah.
sticking it in there and closing the door and just being free, right?
Mm,
Free to connect and to be that intentional parent that you want to be. I did
absolutely.
have a question about the 5-year journal.
Yeah.
Is this part of the app, or are you saying you're keeping your own
Uh,
kind of daily journal about things?
yeah, I keep my own daily journal.
Okay.
The brand I use, I believe it's called Levenger, Levenger, and
Okay.
it's a basic, 366-day journal, and it has 5 lines for each year, so you can fill in the years. I'm on my 5th year now, and so it's so much fun to be able to look back. This is part of my morning routine I do every day, just to look back on, okay, what was I doing on this day in 2019? So now I'm reading through, it was around this time when the pandemic hit and we all went into quarantine a few years ago. So I'm reading about what life was like at that time. So it's so
Mm,
much fun as a look back to see the things you're doing. But that is a manual kind of handwritten journal.
mhm. Well, I love that, and I imagine that if we spent less time on our phones, we could spend more time,
Mm,
like, handwriting
yeah.
some of our experiences, which is so helpful for logging
Mm,
these things in long-term memory and also being able to access those
yeah.
experiences just looking back through a handwritten journal. So I
Mm,
think that's awesome. I also imagine that with your app, you can also look back at if you're tapping it when you pick it up out of the box and you're tapping on what activity you just did
yeah.
that was not connected to your phone. You could have a little bit of a log there
Yeah.
also to just show yourself, like, how am I spending my time differently? This is really awesome, and I want more of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're identifying, you're naming, you're giving a name to what you did, which gives it significance. And you're totally right to be able to look back, whether in aggregate or on an isolated event, and say, "Oh yeah, we did do that." It does make you, in a way, it almost makes things slow down a little bit. You're kind of put in a posture of notice. Again, aura meaning to notice, kind of putting in a posture of notice and reflection and time slowing down because you're not caught up in kind of the monotony and the routine of everyday life.
Mhm. It also makes me think if you start getting yourself in this behavior of spending time away from your phone and with your family in the evenings, um, I know for myself personally what I've experienced when I've done this. I used to sleep with my phone by my bed on the nightstand,
Hmm.
and then I just got so sick of it. I put it in my closet, which is actually 2 rooms away. You have to go
Yep.
through the bathroom to get to the closet. I put it on a special shelf, and like that helped a ton,
Mm,
right? But
yeah,
just like having having a little bit of space and distance from your device is
yeah.
like it just changes things.
And it is one kind of funny thing is when you find that what you just did, without, maybe with or without knowing it, is backed by science. So science tells us, studies tell us, the only way to reduce your smartphone usage is for it to be away from you, physically distant from you, and out of your visual field of sight. That's the only way. Which in some ways is like, yeah, duh. Like, of course, if I don't have my phone with
Sure.
me, then I can't use it. But again, this is what goes back to the whole PID cycle, proximity interaction dependence, is it begins with the fact that it's with us all the time, and that just kind of devolves into interacting with it more, being more dependent on it, then it's more around you. So it just continues to go back, but it begins exactly what you just said. Just remove it from the situation. You're no longer conscious of it, even if it's in your presence and you're not using it. This is interesting. Studies tell us this, from Dr. Maxi Heitmeyer at the London School of Economics. He says that the mere presence of your phone equals interaction with your phone, equals usage of your phone, even if you're not using it, even if the screen's turned off, which is so weird because you're anticipating what might be happening on it at all moments. You're still engaged with it and you're not fully present with whatever other activity you're in at that moment.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
There's also a term called attention residue,
Mm.
which means that when you get distracted from something, you're talking to your kids, and you look at your phone, you glance at your phone because you got a notification. Science proves that it takes your brain 15
Yeah.
minutes
Mm.
to move back to what you were doing when you got distracted. So
Wow.
it's just crazy if you think about that, just over a whole day of work
Mm.
or an evening with your spouse. Every time you get distracted, you glance at that thing. It
Yeah.
actually takes 15 minutes to
Mm.
recalibrate, attend to the person again, and you've lost what they're saying, and you're kind of nodding like you think you're back online, but your brain isn't.
Right.
It's crazy.
That's so
Another
true.
thing I think that people are afraid of, Joey, really, and you probably hear this all the time, is like, but I've got this important job. I need to have
Yeah.
access to my people, to
Mm.
my email, to text. Like, if someone needs something from me, I've got to be available to them.
Yeah.
Well, again, anytime I've set some good hard limits on myself and put my device away where I cannot reach it, it has made me more productive in my work, because just
Yeah.
yesterday my son says, "Mom, it's Sunday. We don't do work on Sundays." And I said, "You're exactly right." I
Mm.
said, "What are you doing in there checking your emails?"
Come on.
And he's like, "I know, I know." I said, "Sunday is a day of rest.
Yeah.
It's a day of refreshment. It is a day for family."
Mm.
And so when I can't access my computer or my phone for emails or texts on a Sunday, I got to be really productive
Yeah.
Monday through Friday. And
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how to squeeze my work into a certain amount of hours,
Mm.
because I know I don't have anything beyond those limits. And so
Yeah.
I'm actually so much more productive, and my
Mm.
team is better for it when I am not texting them at 10 o'clock at night or 4 a.m. in the morning when I'm
Yeah.
awake, you know?
You.
So
Yeah. I
it
mean, I'm not. You got me excited about this topic because you're so right that rest is an act of faith. And
yes,
you are absolutely. It's an act of faith in saying that I'm going to do what I can. I mean, the whole concept of Sabbath in the biblical sense is that God can do in 6 days what the world can do in seven, right? That
yes,
God can do more in 6 days. So, that whole concept is so powerful. And I would agree. Going back to your comment about people who say like, "Hey, I have this extraordinarily important job, and I need to be there for it." I couldn't agree more. I really can't agree more with that statement, but it's not the job you think. The job that you have to be present for. The only unique job that anybody who's a parent has is that of a parent. No one else can be dad to Harrison and Gianna. No one. That's the only unique job I have. No one else can be husband to Kristen. That's me. Right? So
yes,
you do have an important job. And it is your role as a spouse. It is your role as a friend. It is your role as a parent. That's the important job. No, that's not
mm,
to say we're going to be lazy and we're going to be, going to be slothful and we're going to put aside work. But I promise you, for most of us, and by the way, what we're not, what I'm not proposing here, a, hey, be off your phone for 10 hours a day.
right.
We actually have we have a prescription for how long I think you should be off your phone. But I am saying that during dinner, nope, not then. You can be unreachable right then, so that you can be fully reachable in your single unique job, and that's as a parent or as a spouse.
Thank you for saying that. I can't underscore it enough. We have family mission statements. If you're
Mm,
a family of character, you know that God is number one, your spouse is number two, your kids and family are number three, and your career comes behind
that's right.
that. The
Come on.
career is a means to support your family. We understand how important it is, like you
Yeah.
said, but there's got to be some
Mm,
off limits time
yeah.
where you are doing your most important job, like you
Yeah.
said.
It's
Man,
so
we
true.
are speaking the same language
Come on
here. I'm
now.
loving this. We never even met before. This is so
I
good.
know.
I love what you guys are doing in your community at RO.
Well,
This is just fantastic for
thank you.
families.
I'd love to, Jordan, if it's okay. I'd love to. We talk about, and again, in the spirit of this not being a product pitch, I'd love to talk through. I believe that this opportunity is accessible to everybody listening. I think it can begin today for everybody. So we
Mhm.
we have four, with the premise that we need to change our relationship with your phones, and maybe I'll just say it. I'll say that beginning very directly. We need to change our relationship with our phones. And what's on the other side of that, the relational benefit and the relational change is so much greater than what's on a screen. And so I want to give four practical ways for people to change their relationship with their phone. And the first one, and these all start with S, and the first one in how to change your relationship with your phone and as a backdrop, some of you may have read Simon Sinek's book a few years ago, Start With Why. This is a
Yes.
little bit of a play on that. And this is Start With I. This problem, your relationship with your phone is your problem. It's not your spouse's problem. It's not your kid's problem. You must start with I believe that there's going to be a lot of government legislation that comes in. We've seen the TikTok ban that's been passed. We've seen a lot of other things that are happening. We think schools should ban phones. Yes, we think all of those things. However, we can't wait for anybody else.
Hmm.
This is for you. So don't even, we tell people when you get RO in the home, don't begin mandating on everybody else until you have addressed it yourself. By the way, this is hard. This takes a lot of self-awareness to do, but you have to start with I. And as a parent, kind of the model that we've seen the last few years when it comes to having our relationship with our phones is we call these the 3 M's, is that we as parents model a bad relationship with our phones, check our phones at a stoplight or look at them at the dinner table or phone snub somebody in the middle of a conversation. We model a bad relationship with our phones. We give our kids a phone and they mimic what we've modeled to them. And then we
Yes.
do something absolutely crazy with the 3rd M is we get mad at our kids for mimicking what we've modeled to them, which makes zero sense. So instead,
I know.
what if we modeled a good relationship and our kids mimic that good relationship, and then we could make memories and make magic or whatever other cool M you can think of, right?
Yes.
So we have to start with ourselves. That's one, start with I. The second one is I want everybody, and this is very prescriptive. I want everybody to spend, and that's second S, spend 1 hour a day physically distant from your phone. Waking hours, 1 hour per day. And we used to be a little bit more ambiguous with this, like, oh, spend some amount of time. I'm going to give you 1 hour. That should be your goal. And if you have never done this, you might need to start with 5 minutes to
Yes.
begin because you're building a muscle and that's perfectly fine. Begin where you are. There are other people who may be spending 2 hours, 3 hours a day away from their phone. That's good also. I want to encourage that group. Keep building the muscle, keep building it up. And this is a muscle. This is a long term. If you think about it, maybe like running a marathon, if you're going to run 26 miles, you got to start with the first mile. So do your best, but and then if you've already run a marathon, you maybe want to improve your time. So keep pushing at it. But I think everybody should spend 1 hour physically distant from their phones daily. That's
Hmm.
two. The third one is I want people to establish in their homes not either, but both a sacred time and a sacred place that's phone free in your home. And that can be multiple places. So a sacred time could be something like 30 minutes after you wake up in the morning. So you can have your morning routine, your mind is fresh. It could be 30 minutes before you go to sleep. That could be your sacred time. Sacred places are really fun. And by the way, sacred time could also be dinner time. Sacred place, this kind of bleeds into that. Sacred place, the easiest one is the dinner table. That's the one that I think you can get buy-in from everybody. That has usually a finite amount of time. That's 30, 45 minutes, maybe shorter, maybe a little bit longer. But that's a sacred time, and that's just automatically phone free. No matter what. You
Yes.
put it in the RO box if you have it, put it in a drawer, get it physically away from you. Set there a sacred time, sacred place. If you have young kids, or really if you have any kids, I love this one. This is from an RO member who said, in my child's room, I never bring my phone in there. And that was someone who had young kids. And how
Mm.
great is that? I remember, looking at my phone while my son and I were reading a story when I was young. I don't know how I was looking at phone in a book, but it happened. I messed that one up. But what if you just removed the temptation altogether and just had
Mm.
no phone in your child's room? So sacred time, sacred places. And that can be the cool thing about sacred, that whole concept is the concept of a sacred thing is always a common object that we deem as sacred. You have the power to say this is sacred. So establish sacred times and sacred places in your home. And the fourth one is my favorite. This is for all of us to search for moments of connection. Let me explain what I mean by that. We can be on the lookout. These moments of connection, these otherwise common moments are around us all the time, but it requires us to be on the lookout for them. So let's just take an example. If my daughter walks in, 14-year-old daughter walks in, her shoulders are maybe a little bit slumped. And I take note of that. Like, maybe something's wrong there. Or if my son says something like, hey dad, it was a tough day at tennis practice. Or if my wife says, oh, I can't wait to tell you what happened today at the grocery store. Whatever that is, those are little moments for us where the people around us are asking us to connect with them, and we have to be so attentive to it. And when those moments come up, I want you to say something. And these, I believe, and this is going to sound simple, I believe these 6 words are the most powerful words in a relationship in 2024.
Mm.
These 6 words are, "Let me put down my phone." That and when you do that, and I know that sounds basic and simple, but it's just a little note to them, and when you do that, you go put your phone physically away. And because the reason that's important is you're physically showing them your full presence. And don't pat yourself on the back. Hey, just let me put on my phone. And when you do that, here's what you're communicating to that person, whether it's my daughter with the slumped shoulders, or my son who's had a rough day at tennis practice, or my wife had something at the grocery store. I'm telling them, hey, there are theoretically 8 billion people who can reach me on this phone. And right now, you're more important than every single one of them.
Mhm.
So, Jordan, just imagine what that does for a
Yes.
14-year-old girl, the foundational sense of value that gives to a 14-year-old girl as she confronts other difficulty when everything else could go to hell.
Yes.
Everything else can go wrong. But for her, she knows my dad loves me. My dad's
Yes.
eyes, I felt the power of my dad's eyes on me. I felt the power of my dad being fully with me. What does that do for my 16-year-old son, a young man who wants to become a good man? Imagine that.
Yes.
What can that do for intimacy in the marriage with my wife just by that simple act of saying, let me put down my phone, physically removing it, and then being all in with that person? So search for those cues, search for those moments of connections. So, 1, start with I. 2, spend 1 hour a day from your phone. 3, establish sacred times and sacred places in your home that are phone free. And then 4, search for moments of connection.
Joey, this is so good. And when you're talking about number 4 of just saying, let me put my phone down, I
Mm,
just want to emphasize that saying the words and then doing the behavior of getting it out of your pocket and putting it somewhere away, because that communicates there's no competition for my attention right
mm.
now. There's
Ah,
zero
so good.
competition, right? I am not
Mm,
competing with email, with text, with TikTok, with anything, because when we keep it in our pocket, even though we might believe that, okay, I'm fully listening, I'm here. Even
mm.
when you put it on do not disturb, it does a little zzz.
Right.
There's they've tricked us, right? You
Mm,
can set it to not disturb you, but it still does. And
yeah.
you're not fully attentive. So I love those 4 ways to change your relationship with your phone. Start with I.
Mm,
Always going to come from me first, right? I can't
yeah.
expect you to do something if I'm not doing it myself. Spend an hour a day away from your phone, and then establish sacred time, sacred place. Man, you are speaking our language at Families of Character. It's like you got to have some time, some sacred place that you
Mm,
meet up as a family where there's no competition. It's all about connection.
mm,
And so that's your number 3. And then let me put my phone down.
yeah.
And actually doing that, looking for
Mm,
those meaningful moments of connection.
mm,
Awesome. I love how your organization is all about changing the core relationship with your phone. We
mm.
are desperate for this. We need it. The whole world is needing this change and actual practical tips on how to get going changing that relationship with our phone. And you brought it all today in a 1-hour episode. I'm not surprised, but I'm happy about it. I mean, I've watched your interviews on social media, and like, this is just what you do. You just make
Mm,
it practical for families. You offer a real tool, but you're also saying, like, if you don't want to buy this product, throw it in a drawer, like make your
yeah.
own box, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
not married to this idea that you have to buy this thing from us. You're
Yeah.
saying, we care about your family, we care about your connection, we care about your relationship with your family over your
Mm,
phone.
yeah.
And that's what we're all about here at the RO community.
It's totally right. And this is, RO, again, when I may be the worst salesman in the world. Let's just be honest there and saying that, like, hey, I don't care if you join RO. I really don't. Because I think I think the lifestyle of RO is accessible to everyone. And this really is, though, for the person who said, I've tried, like, hey,
Yeah,
I've tried something. I've had a hard time with this. I really need some help. This is for that. That's who RO is for. When you say, hey, I need a little bit of help. And I'll tell you that this legitimately will change your life. I know it because of the experience of my life. I know it because that's what we hear from thousands of other people who've joined RO. But this is for the person. If you can do this on your own, please do. But if you are someone who says, like, hey, I need a little bit of help, then we will help and it will make a difference.
that's right. And not only help, but just that community and gamifying the experience where you
Yeah.
as a family can make it a fun challenge
Imagine that.
to Yes, to disconnect. It doesn't have to be. I love when you said, don't be saying, okay, we've got to all dock our phones and this is like a mandate, right? And if you
Yeah.
don't, then this. It's like, hey guys, we're in this challenge. We're part of this
Yeah.
this community. Let's do this. Let's rack up the connection, with our family and our as a spouse. You mentioned weekly date nights. Like
Mm,
imagine just the things that are possible when you change your relationship with your phone. You're not dependent on it like we talked about at the beginning, and then you this whole other world opens up to you.
yeah. That's right.
Mm. Joey, thank you for bringing the goodness. Thank you for blessing our families with a real solution and a real community behind it. I would encourage everyone to visit the website goaro.com, goaro.com. Joey, you're doing a good job when I'm the one promoting everything. I'm like sold over here. You're not having to tell people how to get to your website or access your community. I'm doing it for you because I'm a believer.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate that.
keep doing what you're doing. I don't imagine this is the last time we'll have contact with each other. We've got to stay in community, continue
Yeah.
to help parents do the number one right thing for their family, which is to be
Mm,
present and connected and intentional about this number one most important job.
absolutely. Jordan, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. It is fun to be so aligned with you and how you're building families of character. So thank you. And this was such a fun conversation.
Awesome. Check them out on social media during the time that you're not connecting with your family
Mm.
on Instagram. Also, check them out at goaro.com, guys. And also, if you are looking for some connection with your spouse, you are doing this, you're getting away from your phone a little bit more. Look at our couples coaching. We've got what's called a Thriving Family Accelerator. It's 4 quick sessions, live coaching with me talking about how to rally your family as a team and get in some rhythm, some good weekly family habits that get you connecting and on the same page with the calendar, with communication, and with a simple common goal. So check out familiesofcharacter.com, our shop tab, if you want to learn more about our live coaching that goes perfectly with Joey's message today. So Joey, thanks again. And guys, I'll catch you on another episode of the Families of Character show real soon. Take care.